Good morning, everyone. It's James Carpenter of Country Living. Today I want to talk about my experience working for Honda of America, the Marysville auto plant. I was hired by Honda in 1982, October of 1982. My clock number was 793, and for the first 2 weeks, the auto plant wasn't even in production yet. So Honda had hired 50 associates to work the assembly process, and I was put in assembly, basically putting the cars together. They had several departments. They had stamping, they had paint, they had first stamping, weld, paint, and then they come down to the assembly line. And I was on the assembly line in the early days. So basically, for the first 2 weeks, we were basically just sweeping floors, watching the construction workers finish the line. And they got it done, and that first car came down into the assembly area, and I was responsible for 1/4 of the assembly line, and I did all the processes on the right-hand side. We were all assigned a Japanese trainer to teach us what we were doing. Because we were doing several processes, we had to constantly keep moving down the line, do the next process, and it was so easy to get behind because there was too much wasted time. So I organized my process, and the Japanese go, "Oh, Jimmy-san, you do." So I made it easier so I could keep up, basically. So I was on that assembly line for 2 weeks, and one day they came and got me, and they gave me a little toolbox, and the terminology was, "Jimmy-san, you final repair, assembly repair." And I thought, okay, I can do that. I can fix cars. So I went to final repair, and the QC department would write up rejections. They called them rejections. And if it was assembly related, then it was our responsibility to fix it. For example, maybe a hole in the headliner. So one little hole in the headliner, and it would take, a couple hours to remove the old headliner and put the new one in. But anyhow, that was a heck of a lot better than the repetitive online stuff, but it still wasn't what I wanted to do. So I look at those repair sheets, and I would see them QC people. They would write up a rejection, and it might take me hours to repair it. But by reading that sheet from all the different inspectors, I learned their techniques. So one day I said to my Japanese trainer, I said, "Jimmy-san, QC." No, Jimmy-san, assembly. And I'm going, no, Jimmy-san, QC. Well, finally they sent me to QC. And my first position in QC was doing the interior and exterior inspection. And I was good at it because I knew what to look for from reading all them inspection sheets. And I was really good at the rejections. I was actually so good that the coordinator, which is a salary level job, he come up to me and he says, "Carpenter, you can quit writing this up." And me being me, I looked up at him and I said, "You bring me a Japanese guy to tell me to quit writing it up, and I'll quit writing it up." So basically I was disobeying a direct order, but he knew that there was nothing he could do about it. The Japanese were going to say, no, write it up. It's a problem. Because they like to track the problem so they can figure out what's causing it and get it taken care of. So in order to have less write-ups on the exterior and interior, they moved me to a job called a dyno. And not my forte. I didn't care for that. We had to get on a dyno and check this, check that. There was a whole bunch of different checks, but there was one in particular that I was extremely good at, and that was water leak. So when you came off the dyno, you drove into what's called a shower tester. And in the shower tester, you were to look for water leaks. Well, I got extremely good at that, and guess what? The water leak rejection went through the roof. And so one day that same coordinator, he comes up there and he goes, "This car doesn't leak water." I said, "Well, can we go in the shower tester and see?" He goes, "Yeah." So I was in the driver's seat and he was in the passenger seat. And we got in the shower tester. When you do repetitive stuff over and over again, you know exactly how long it's going to take before that water enters. So I basically said to the coordinator, I said, "Are you ready?" And he looked at me kind of dumbfounded and said, "What do you mean, am I ready?" And I took my arm and I pointed it at the pillar garnish. And the minute my finger hit the pillar garnish, a stream of water came out from around the windshield and across the pillar garnish, and all that coordinator just shook his head. He couldn't believe it. So now they're in a conundrum. They know they got an inspector here that's going to find it all. So they kind of promoted me to get me off the line and gave me a position that's production staff. And basically I was part of a group. There was probably 4 or 5 of us. And our responsibility was to take the rejections that were being written up and figure out what the problem is. And I'll use one simple example, and that would be, let's say that the way they would write it up, window regulator heavy. And what they meant by that is it was hard to roll the window up. So we would tear the door down, look at it, take measurements, try to figure out what the heck's causing this. And in that particular situation, the welding shop had made an adjustment and it caused the inner and outer door skin to be even just a millimeter closer, which put more tension on everything. But I did that for, maybe a year. And then Honda decided they were going to start exporting cars to Japan, and eventually that went from Japan to Australia and all kinds of countries. So they called that export PDI, and they moved me from that group to a place called a startup of export PDI. And it was my responsibility at that point to look the cars over that were going overseas. And I was still finding rejections that had made it all the way through the process where the car needed to be shipped. But then it come to me and I re-inspected it, or my group, that group grew. At first it was just me, and then they started giving me employees, and then they went to 2 shifts, first shift, second shift, and they promoted me to production coordinator at that point, which meant I had 2 team leaders, one on first shift, one on second shift, and I had about 10 employees underneath them, 5 on each shift. And that was a really nice job. What they would do is we would find a whole bunch of rejections, write them up, and then they would send us over to Japan, and we would intercept those cars when they got to Japan. And it was our job to look for shipping damage, because we knew what the car looked like before we sent it. Now we want to see what it looks like after it was transported. So I made a couple different trips to Japan over the years, And it was all great. I had a good time. But the one portion of that job back there in export PDI was every morning I would take a car and I'd put little dots all over it, different colored dots for different colored departments. And the department manager from each department had to show up for that meeting every morning, and I had to go over these rejections, and then it was their responsibility as the manager to go back to their department and make countermeasures to resolve the issue. So overall, everything was going great, and then I wound up in a divorce situation, and it kind of got ugly. Anyhow, long story short, without getting into the details of that, I ended up losing that job at Honda over some trivial nonsense. But in all actuality, it worked to my benefit, because when I did work at Honda, I worked an extreme amount of overtime, and I was able to build a nice garage on my property, and subsequently went into business for myself, repairing cars. And I named the business Auto Inspection Service because I was good at inspecting. And I thought at the time I was going to get lucky and I could just do pre-purchase inspections for people that's buying a car or turning it in from warranty or anything like, or turning it in for at the end of warranty, to make sure if there was anything wrong with it, they could get it fixed while it was still under warranty. And there was a few occasions where I saved people a lot of money. So my experience at Honda was a good experience. I made the best out of it. I'm sure that the Japanese would have loved to have kept me, but the Americans was running associate relations, and they made a decision to let me go without considering how valuable I was as an employee. So that's water over the dam. I'm in a better place now. I've been running my own business for 35 years, and now I'm just making YouTube videos for you. So if you really want to help me out, you'll like this video, you'll leave me some comments, and you'll subscribe if you really like the channel. With that being said, I want to wish you a happy evening and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.